Oh boy, Ganon! It's the Brawl in the Family podcast! Or as they might say in Super Mario Bros. 2,
Brawl in the Family podcast!
Podcast Episode 2, A Link to the Past, and long tutorials. Hello everyone, and welcome to another installment of the Brawl in the Family podcast. I am Matthew.
And I am Chris.
And we're your hosts today.
Yeah?
So today we're going to be talking about a bunch of things. First of all, a very beloved game, but it's an older game, unlike last podcast where we talked about Fire Emblem Awakening. And we're also going to be talking about the response to the first podcast and sort of what we plan to do with the podcast in the future. So, let's go ahead and get started. Get right on it with game discussion.
The game we're going to talk about this week is The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past, the beloved gem from the Super Nintendo days.
Oh, yes.
There's a lot of great things about this game that I really liked, and I know you were also a fan.
Yes, of course. A Link to the Past is definitely not only one of my favorite Zelda games, but arguably one of the best Zelda games in terms of just fan reaction. It's, like you said, it's a beloved game, and it's definitely one that I feel is arguably the quintessential Zelda game in terms of what it does and what it introduced.
Oh, absolutely. It took what the previous Zelda games did, and it kind of fine-tuned the formula. You know, you've got the two kind of distinct phases of the game, you know, where you have a number of dungeons that you have to go through and collect the, item at the end to unlock something, and then, oh man, now there's this brand new world and you got to do it again, except there's a bunch more dungeons.
Yeah. I mean, I could see someone thinking that they're near the end of the game after they pull the Master Sword, which is known as this item that defeats evil, and heads up to the castle in that very dramatic sequence, and then all of a sudden being hit with the realization that, whoa, holy cow, I've got 8 more dungeons to do, and a whole new world. There we go. I was trying not to use those words in succession.
Yeah, and this and that formula was reused by many subsequent Zelda titles. Most notably Ocarina of Time, which kind of did almost the exact same thing. But, that's fine, because it did a lot of other things that were obviously very different.
Right. Ocarina of Time, and in terms of games that use that basic structure, Ocarina of Time did it, Wind Waker did it, Twilight Princess did it, Skyward Sword even did it to a lesser degree. So, A Link to the Past, Zelda no Densetsu Kamigami no Triforce. There, I think I got that. Which I think is Triforce of the Gods, which is a pretty dramatic subtitle.
Wow.
Released in Japan November 21st, 1991, and then A Link to the Past released in the US on April 13th, 1992, and in Europe in September 24th, 1992. Yeah, so like we said, this is the quintessential Zelda game, and I would say it's my favorite series on my favorite game system by my favorite company in my favorite industry. But it is not my favorite game. In fact, it's not even my favorite Zelda, and I will reveal what my favorite Zelda is a little later in the podcast. But yeah, Link to the Past is definitely up there. It is top 5 for me, which is saying something because I think I have 5 or 6 Zeldas in my top 20.
So, now we know how big of a Zelda fan you are. Can you tell me, what is your favorite thing about this game?
Favorite thing? Well, a bunch of things immediately kind of come to mind with Link to the Past. Initially, I really love just how the game begins. That might actually be my favorite sequence in the game.
Yeah.
Where, Link is awoken by this telepathic message. His uncle heads out, you grab a torch, and then you're going out in the rain on your own, and it's all like, doo-doo-doo, doo-doo-doo, and it's all like dramatic, You're walking around in the rain, and you're kind of learning to pick stuff up, and there's not really any enemies, but it's still like, it's still a memorable sequence. And then you're doing this whole sewer escape sequence, which is like a really kind of powerful way to start off the game.
Absolutely.
The game never tells you like, all right, in this room, you're going to learn how to, jump off ledges or pick up bushes. Your uncle gives you the sword, he's like, here, take this and hold down B if you want to do a spin attack. And then he dies. Those are his last words or something. So you walk through, you're smacking stuff, and you basically have this whole mini dungeon before the game kind of opens up and you can relax a little bit. So it's really a great beginning, and probably my favorite Zelda beginning, in fact.
I completely agree with that. I think that is one of the most remarkable things about the game, especially when you compare it to modern games. I think it's just such a huge contrast between being completely thrust into a very compelling situation. It's kind of, mysterious, and it's kind of exciting because you don't really know what's going on, but you're able to learn just through context. Like, okay, it's raining, there's these, evil-looking soldiers. They're not, very friendly to me, apparently.
I mean, the music's all dramatic and it's storming, and you're basically guided upwards to this castle. You know something's going on. This girl is telepathically telling you she's in trouble.
Yeah.
And you got to sneak into the castle. You can't go in through the main entrance. You got to find your way in. So already you're getting that sense of discovery and rescue from the very first minutes of the game.
And I think that's a strength I think that games have that other mediums don't have. The ability to convey this information without words.
Yeah.
All that information the player intuitively grasps.
Yeah, Link to the Past does a very good job of just dropping you in that situation. And that's one of my favorite parts of the game. I think the graphics are done really well in particular. This usually isn't like a major deal for me in terms of games, but for Link to the Past, it's such a colorful and inviting world. Everything feels so round and volumetric that the designs really just are super inviting to me. Like, you really just want to run around and explore the world. You have those crazy, mushroom-looking trees, and, all the enemies are kind of squatting around and bumpy and colorful, and it just makes you want to, hit them with their sword, just kind of go nuts.
Yeah, I completely agree, and it helps that pretty much every screen in the game has something interesting about it. There's always something to find around every corner. You're going to find some sort of secret or something to do. And I think that density of action, it's kind of unique to 2D games because, when you switch the perspective to a 3D game, all the environments just get bigger. You can't have that much packed into one small area. It just look weird.
Right. But other things it does well, I noticed that Link to the Past actually introduces a lot of elements. We already touched down on the basic structure of the game, which is used in later games of the series, but other things it introduced was, first of all, the hook shot, which is one of the most iconic weapons/items.
Oh yeah, that's been in every Zelda since then,
Pretty much. Not everyone. I think a couple of the handhelds didn't have it, but it basically does make an appearance in every Zelda for the most part. It's just a nice Spider-Man kind of item that gives Link that extra bit of mobility, and it's really iconic and unique for the series. You can also pick up objects. That's something that became a staple in all the games after that. There's sort of a rudimentary form of auto jumping, which, not to take anything away from Ocarina of Time, because it was definitely an unconventional mechanic at that time too. But A Link to the Past does have ledges where you'll press towards them and he'll jump off them. There's a couple spots in dungeons where you'll have a space, and an arrow pointing that way, and you can actually jump over the gap. So there's a little bit of form of that was definitely expanded in Ocarina of Time. What else? Oh, the Master Sword, of course, was a big element. Before that, we just had the Magical Sword, which was just it was a strong sword, but it didn't have any sort of legendary aspects to it. The Magic Meter was another one, using magic for attacks and things. The Mirror Shield was another one, and lighting torches. So you really have a lot of gameplay elements that were introduced with this games that became staples of the series.
What about heart pieces? Were those?
Oh yeah, that's another one. Heart pieces were basically a new element. I think they went that way instead of full heart containers because you can basically have more secrets. You can hide more heart pieces without having Link have 40 hearts. So Zelda 1 had hidden heart containers. Link to the Past kind of split them up and scattered them about. And, apparently that worked for the series. It also introduced a lot of music, such as the Fairy Fountain theme, the Kakariko Village theme, Zelda's Lullaby, of course, one of the most iconic songs in the series. Ganon's theme was also new. The Ganon Battle theme, and of course the Hyrule Castle song, which has also appeared in a few of them, notably Wind Waker. So, we have Link to the Past, we have this lovely game, introduced all sorts of things, and it's packed full of content, 12 dungeons. But it is not perfect, Chris.
It's not?
No. Yeah, well, some people would disagree with me. Some people would hang me for that. But I do have some issues with A Link to the Past. I've played through Link to the Past about 5 or 6 times, I think. Maybe a little more. And, it's held up really well. But I do find myself missing elements that were parts of the series from later games, which it may seem a little unfair to prefer elements from later games, but it's still an element of the series that I feel is a big part of Zelda.
What's that?
Well, that is the character interaction and the charm element. Kind of one of those intangibles. Now, in the interest of fairness, I'm just going to compare this to Link's Awakening, which was a Game Boy game that came just 1 year after Link to the Past, basically. So, Link's Awakening definitely borrowed some stuff from Link to the Past, but one of my favorite things about the game was that between dungeons, there was always something to do. There was always something that was required before the next dungeon.
Yeah.
So, in other words, like, after the first dungeon, you have to go get Bow Wow, the chain chomp, to clear up the plants. You gotta save them from these moblins. After that, you go to Candlelit Castle, you meet Prince Richard, you get his golden leaves, and it's like this whole side thing. Beyond that, there's you escort a ghost to its grave. You have to find keys to open the dungeons. You have to go get Marin, like take her on a date, and then take her to the walrus so she can sing and make the walrus fall in the water. There's all sorts of these scenarios that I think really add to the character of the game, and it's carried over in future games. Ocarina of Time did something similar with the between dungeon content. I don't know how to describe that best, but yeah, like in comparison, A Link to the Past, you basically go from one dungeon to the next in terms of required stuff. Now, there's a lot to do in the overworld in terms of secrets, but it doesn't feel like it has quite the variety of later games and the character interaction, which is one of the things I really like.
I hear what you're saying. However, I think the lack of that character interaction, contributed to the more rapid pacing of the game. Like, pretty much everything about Link to the Past is a lot more, like, rapid fire than those later Zelda games you're referring to. Maybe Link to the Past would be an exception, or, excuse me, maybe Link's Awakening would be an exception. But, if you just look at, say, any given dungeon in Link to the Past, you can get through a room pretty quickly. Even if there's enemies in it or a quick puzzle to do, you can beat through a room in a matter of seconds. You really can't do that in these later games. The puzzles, the dialogue, even the combat has gotten kind of more and more drawn out as those elements are added. And so even though I think I agree that some elements of A Link to the Past, I guess you could call it a bit more shallow because it doesn't have that, I guess, character depth. It's still the pacing of the game. I'm not sure it would really accommodate that too well. Like, if you try to envision Link to the Past as it is right now, how would you really add that sort of character element?
I think Link to the Past. I think Link's Awakening still feels pretty brisk in terms of its pacing. Yeah, but the characters stand out to me in a lot more than, like, say, Sahasrara and company. I still don't know if I'm saying that name right, but that's basically the only character that Link really interacts with besides Princess Zelda in the game that's recurring. Yeah. So I think just more recurring characters that you could just, you could talk to, or maybe like a trading sequence, some sort of side quest or something, would really go a long way in adding to the personality of the game itself. Since the dialogue itself it's sort of rudimentary compared to the kind of zany dialogue of Link's Awakening, or the number of great characters in Ocarina of Time that I enjoyed interacting with, like the sages and such.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
But I think it's possible to keep the game feeling brisk and fast and still having that extra element of character interaction. So, Chris, do you have a favorite boss in the game?
I liked a lot of the bosses in the game, actually. Each one kind of had a different twist on it. I remember liking, what's his name? The guy where you got to hammer his helmet.
Yeah, the Helmasaur King is actually my favorite boss.
Yeah.
He was cool.
Might be him.
He was big and scary and imposing.
Yeah, and he was like the first guy you fought when you went into the Dark World, right?
Yep. It's a good way to kick off that whole sequence. This was the last Zelda game to not have the whole use the dungeon item and then hit 3 times with the sword kind of thing, or slash away with the sword kind of thing. I think that really started in Link to the Past. I have got to stop doing that. That really started in Link's Awakening and continued on through the
Brawl
through
in
the
the
3D games.
family
Now, that is a theme
podcast.
that I would not dislike to see go away, because I think they've really been overdoing that.
That's pretty much run its course.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, Link to the Past is a solid game.
It is an excellent game. It's kind of set the standard for future Zelda games and for other top-down adventure games, I guess you might say. Well, wait, did it? What other games?
Maybe Illusion of Gaia? It set the stage for Illusion of Gaia.
Yes.
Hooray! That was a pretty good game, I guess.
I played part of it. It started out pretty well.
It's pretty nuts. It's got some crazy moments.
Yeah.
Alright, so let's move on to comic talk.
Alright, so what comic shall we discuss?
Alright, well, we're just gonna shoot through all these that I've done since the last podcast. So we're starting with 469, Trapped Old Man. Alright, so in this one, Link bombs the thing, and then he goes in, and the old guy is like, hey, get me out of here. And then he's like, pay me for the door repair charge. So, this is all about Zelda 1. And I really like Zelda 1's just, like, archaic, old dialogue. Like, everything in the game is just so obscure and weird sounding that it's just fun to make comics around those ideas. So this kind of follows in the tradition of the It's a Secret to Everybody comic, where you sort of take one line and you kind of like, what's going on here exactly? And that's basically what I did here.
Yeah, it's a very bizarre thing about that game. They actually have those little scenes where, you know, you bomb a wall, you go in, and the guy charges you for blowing up his door, apparently, but what kind of a door is that? It's like a crack in a big rock wall.
Yeah, what is he doing there? Do they live in caves? I mean, and if they live in caves, do they just seal themselves up? I mean, what an existence with two things of lit fire. I don't know, man. It just seems bizarre to me. So I mean, this at least kind of puts it in some sort of context. The old man is just a very detestable guy. So, which seems in his character, because he's definitely one of my least favorite guys in the first Zelda.
Well, how many guys are there?
Well, there's basically him. There's the merchant, and there's the old woman. So, yeah. But sometimes I stab him in the dungeons to get revenge on that.
Wait, you stab him?
Yeah, you can stab him, and the fire shoots at you.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. I don't know if it's the same old guy, but it looks like him, so I'm gonna trust him. It stinks when you're burning these bushes and bombing these rocks, and all of a sudden it's like, oh man, I found a secret, and you go in and it's like, oh, pay for the door repair charge. And you lose your money. And he's like, oh.
Is it a lot?
It's like 50 rupees. It's annoying.
Whoa.
Yeah, and I mean, 50 rupees back then, in 1986, was a lot of money.
Yeah, accounting for inflation, that's like 1,000 rupees today.
Yeah, it's like 1,000 rupees in Skyward Sword.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's a lot of money. I want to buy my blue ring for $250. Alright, so there was that one. And next we have 470, A Most Unusual Speech. This comic, why did I come up with this? Oh, yeah, I actually watched something on YouTube the other day. I was kind of on a Disney kick. And I watched this deleted Jafar song from Aladdin called Humiliate the Boy.
Yeah.
Okay? And it's basically Jafar looking into his crystal ball, and he's singing this song. He just got control of the genie, you know? So he's singing this song. It's like, humiliate the boy! And like, Aladdin would suddenly stuff his finger in his nose. You know, he's like up there with the Sultan and Jasmine greeting the people. And he starts doing all these ridiculous things, right? Because of the genie's magic, and Jafar's, you know, wishing for it to happen. So that was a pretty neat song. So I think I was actually inspired by that when I was making this one, where Mario and Luigi are running around inside of Bowser. And the thing is, you actually do stuff like this in the game. Like, you'll hit things to make Bowser stronger, to make his muscles work better, or to make him breathe fire or whatever. So I imagine, you know, it should be true if they're just, like, running around hitting stuff in there just willy-nilly. He'll be doing all sorts of bizarre things.
They do that, don't they? I mean, in the...
Well,
is everything they fight...
him.
Well, I mean, is everything they fight inside his body, like, for a purpose, or are they just running around hitting whatever they can?
Yeah, it's based. You have story related reasons why they're in there. I mean, it's still a very silly game and everything, but yeah, mostly they're helping out Bowser. You see, in this comic, I like to picture them not actually being malicious. They're just like, oh, this is a fun. Oh yeah, oh yeah, this is neat. You know, and the whole time, like, Bowser's doing whatever on the outside, where like he's flipping around, picking his nose and slapping himself.
His castle was taken over? Is that part of the game?
Yeah, Fawful takes over his castle in the beginning. Waffle is the main villain. It was a neat game. I liked it a lot. It
Better
had
than
some great characterization of Bowser. Yeah, Partners in Time was Partners in Time was blah. Sorry, Partners in Time fans, but man. All right, so after that we get Borrow the Car, 471, and I wanted to do another Star Fox comic because we hadn't seen Fox McCloud in a while. So this is a little bit similar to actually the Fire Emblem comic you did, in that it sort of mixes the real element of the game with Smash Brothers, and kind of uses that contrast for the gag. But in this case, it's basically about Wolf using the Landmaster, which I don't know where he pulls it from, but apparently he pulls it from the game. And one thing bothered me with this comic when I was drawing it, and that's that Wolf's Landmaster is technically red, while Fox's is blue.
Yeah, I always assumed they had different Landmasters, personally.
Otherwise, they are identical. But, I mean, you never see Wolf's Landmaster in the games.
Yeah.
So it was kind of a cheat, but also, like, it's a blue and white comic, so you can't tell. So, there we go. All right.
So it's believable that he took Fox's, I guess.
Maybe he took Fox's and then painted it very slowly and then went to the level and did his final smash while Fox was still in there.
Maybe.
Yeah, he ended up sitting on Fox's lap. At first he was next to Fox, and I thought, if Fox is piloting this thing, he wouldn't just scoot over. There probably wouldn't even be a second seat. So, yeah, he just warped onto Fox's lap. And it looks pretty ridiculous. Alright, so 472, The Facts of Life.
You've got, like, something with Yoshis and Yoshi babies, don't you?
Yoshi is weird, man.
Yeah, but, like, you've got, I don't know,
There's,
you've
like,
got at least, like, half a dozen, maybe, I don't know.
There've been a lot with just exploring Yoshi's egg-making abilities.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many questions, Like, what happens when that egg hatches? Will it be a Shy Guy? Will it be a dead Shy Guy? Will it be empty like in Yoshi's Island, or will it be a baby Yoshi? I don't know.
You've got to wonder. It goes through their bodies so quickly that not much digestion could be occurring, right? Like, well,
yeah, I think it either seals up what they eat in an egg, or it just turns what they eat into an egg that may or may not be fertilized. It's bizarre.
Yeah, because so wait, let's explore this for a moment here.
Right.
In Super Mario World, you have Yoshi eggs that are actually hatching. What other games have Yoshi's egg hatch?
The Yoshi puzzle game does, and in that game, you match a bottom half of the eggshell with enemies in the middle, and then a top half of the eggshell will fall, and it'll squish all the enemies, and then a Yoshi will come out.
Ooh.
So that actually adds some sort of it kind of confirms what this comic is saying about enemies turning into baby Yoshis.
How does that happen?
I don't know how that happens. They will be assimilated until everything in the Mushroom Kingdom is a baby Yoshi. Hey, that's a good way to fight back against Bowser, man. Just replace all his troops with Mario's allies.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the male doesn't actually contribute any genetic material, does he?
Doesn't look like it in this comic. I had to keep it family friendly.
Yeah.
So,
wait, did you reveal that non-family friendly?
Oh, you know what? I should. It's actually not that bad. It's no worse than Tender Yet Sticky. Maybe I shouldn't say Tender Yet Sticky regarding this comic. Okay. Yeah, I'll post that. I'll post that in the boards with it. I actually did draw it. There was one other thing I was going to say about this, and I don't remember what it was. I don't know.
There's that bonus comic at the bottom.
Yoshi is gross. Oh yeah, the baby just falls on him. Oh, I was thinking about something. In Super Mario World, you eat a lot of fruits. You eat those fruits with Yoshi with the berries.
Yeah.
And then he squats and an egg pops out, and then a mushroom comes out of the egg, right?
Yep.
Then Mario eats the mushroom. Okay. So I was thinking, all right, this is the only time you see mushrooms being formed in the Mushroom Kingdom.
Oh.
So what if mushrooms are really just Yoshi poop? And they're just, they're everywhere, right? Because Yoshis are, kind of everywhere. They're probably gonna use, and Mario's eating these things,
And why is Irio putting this poop into boxes?
Yeah, what's the deal, Irio? What are you doing, man? This is pretty gross when you think about it. Yeah, so that almost became a comic, and then I thought, no. Yeah. So that's something to think about with Yoshi, in case you hadn't had enough Yoshi weirdness. All right, let's move on. All right, the last one we have, there's going to be one on Friday, but I don't know what that is. I can't see into the future, so relax. Last one we have is 473, Gourmet Rematch. And here we have Kirby and DDD finally doing the Gourmet Race. And, of course, feeling very terrible, because that's a bad idea.
It is. It's a callback to that earlier comic where they're about to race and then Kirby eats DDD and they don't actually race, I guess, so...
Right.
This is the actual race where Kirby has apparently agreed not to eat him.
Yep.
Now,
one
thought that I had was that pasta and ice cream, that can't be that bad. I mean, ice cream's pretty good with starch.
Really?
I don't know.
Well, I was thinking more like the marinara sauce and the meatball and all that.
Yeah, all that together.
It probably wouldn't sit right. Although one reader did note that Kirby's eaten a lot more weird mixes of foods. But see, the way I'm thinking about it is he wasn't eating those going, like as fast as he can.
Yeah.
Like I think it's really more the act of running while eating all this that would kind of make you sick. And on that note, someone actually linked Reggie Wolf from the boards linked to an actual thing, which is a Krispy Kreme challenge, where you're supposed to eat 12 donuts and run for 5 miles in an hour. Also known as the Vomit Challenge.
Ew.
No, it's not. But yeah, I can't imagine that being very fun. I mean, I like donuts and all, but holy cow, eating a dozen donuts while running 5 miles in an hour. It just sounds like a recipe for disaster.
Yeah. What is the idea behind that? Is it like you're supposed to burn off all the calories by running for an hour?
Well, it's kind of like it's like a fundraiser, for a hospital, but it's like, I guess it's like a fun run with kind of a twist, but it just seems like, holy cow, that's gonna not end well.
Yeah.
Or maybe I'm just not very good at eating while running. Maybe I need to hone that skill.
Maybe, because you definitely don't burn off that many calories in an hour of running. You'd have to run for a few hours to, at least.
Burn off all those calories, yeah. Okay, so one other thing we want to mention with Comic Talk is that the user Yoshi Star from the forum says, "The Comic Talk was fantastic and funny. Perhaps you should have a segment in which you'd pull a past comic number or more out of a hat or something and discuss those comics. Then crumple those numbers out to avoid any repeats in the future podcast." So, I actually like this idea, but we don't have to deal with hats and numbers because we already have a random button. So, with Comic Talk, we will talk about the past comics that we just did, but we'll also hit the random button once and talk about one of the comics from anywhere in the Brawl in the Family history. So, here we go. I'm clicking random, and, oh, look at that. It's number 260, The Captive Princess.
Ooh, that's a good one.
It's kind of a heck of a comic to start off on. Yeah, this one is actually one of my favorites. Like this is one of the comics I was happiest with. It's super long, of course, but this comic really started from me wanting a bit of a stronger female presence in the strip, and it was actually inspired by Princess Peach's portrayal in the Paper Mario series. I really like her characterization in that. She's very crafty and she's smart, and it even though she gets kidnapped a lot and she's not really a match for Bowser exactly. She's more than capable in terms of thinking for herself and sneaking around. What was that noise?
I just hit my elbow on something.
Oh, you all right?
Yeah.
All right, good. Yeah. So basically, I thought it'd be cool to take the Paper Mario Princess Peach. Wow. Paper Mario Princess Peach, and put her in a situation of the first game, essentially, where she's captive and she's just waiting. So I put in some sneaking around, and then Mario thinks he's the hero, and that's that.
Yeah, I think this comic did add a lot of depth to Peach as she's portrayed in Brawl in the Family. Not only is she, strong and clever and able to pretty much get herself out of the situation, she accepts. She doesn't, tell Mario at the end, "Oh, thanks a lot. I didn't need you to come."
She's still giving him the credit, because
yeah.
I mean, we know as players that Mario had to go through, a lot of stuff as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I wanted to make Peach kind of aware of that difficulty, since she just went through it too, to to not be a jerk.
I also liked the earrings. Were the earrings part of another game, or is that just something that you decided to put on Peach?
She has earrings, but I was trying to think of things that she could do in the cell, and that was one of the things that I knew I wanted her to write on the wall, basically. But all she had was basically the clothes on her back, her usual outfit. So the earrings kind of became, an item of utility that she could use to write on the wall and later to distract the guard. So that's kind of where that came from. The other thing that she uses was her crown, So I wanted to basically just use the stuff that
I see.
is already part of her outfit.
And what was the deal with when she has that art on the wall that she has chiseled, and it's basically she's throwing a turnip at, is that Wart?
Oh yeah. Well, it's supposed to be Bowser, but I basically, I had the idea of, her kind of seeing herself as maybe a hero in this fantasy world. So I was thinking, what can Peach? We're establishing that Peach can't really fight for herself, unlike in Smash Brothers.
Yeah.
So by that point, we know basically that Peach can pick up and throw turnips. I mean, ignoring the idea that Mario 2 was all in Mario's dream. So I see her as seeing that as a weapon, the vegetables. So that's basically where that came from. An earlier idea I had for this one, before I actually decided to make a really big one, it was a lot darker. It was basically one long, tall panel, and it was all this stuff written on the wall that Peach had written, like just her feelings and her thoughts, and kind of similar to what was established here a little bit, but a lot more in depth, and all the days she's been there. And at the bottom would be like a skeleton in her dress.
Whoa!
Yeah,
that's too much.
Obviously, I ended up not going with that, but it is fun to mention as a one.
Now, what was your idea behind the art style in this comic? Because it was a bit different than how you had previously portrayed Peach.
Oh, it's because I knew there was going to be a lot of small panels, and I wanted to fit Peach in those, and I also didn't want to draw like a fully excuse me. I didn't want to draw like a fully proportioned kind of taller Peach. It would, not only is that kind of a weakness for me, like it's harder for me to draw that sort of thing, but also she wouldn't fit in the panels as well. You wouldn't be able to see very much of her. So I kind of took a 16-bit approach to it. They have like RPGs, 16-bit RPGs, they're very squat.
Yeah.
They kind of have very defining looks. This is basically Final Fantasy III Peach.
I like that description. Final Fantasy III Peach.
Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, that was definitely a big influence. Like just that their head is almost the size of their body kind of look. Well, I guess that'll wrap up our random comic discussion there. All right, now it is time to talk about things that might bother us a little bit in video games. In this recurring segment called Why Did They Do That?
Why did they do that? Why did they do that?
Sometimes we do stupid things, every single talk about them.
Scout, why did they do that? Why? Why did they do things like that?
Why did they do that?
Why did they do that, Matthew?
They went and did it. I thought they wouldn't do it, but they did it.
Did it.
All right,
they went and did it.
They did it.
Man, they do so many
Truly.
things.
So today on Why Did They Do That,
Yep.
Chris will discuss something that's been bugging him that's relevant to our topic of discussion this time around.
Yes. My question is, why do modern Zelda games explain things 1,000 times over and over? Like when you pick up a rupee and it said, hey, this is 5 rupees. And then next time you play the game, it says, hey, this is 5 rupees. And it's like, I know. It's a blue rupee. It's worth 5 rupees. I know this.
It's been worth 5 rupees since 1992.
I know. Oh. And then,
all right, wait. One thing I need to interject real quick. That was actually a glitch in Skyward Sword for it saying the amount of rupees again.
And Twilight Princess.
Oh, wait.
It's both of them!
It's both of Come on, Nintendo.
But I guess the broad complaint I have is, why have they slowed the pace of the game down to the level where you're being dragged through these long explanations that you can't skip about things you already know, especially things they've already told you?
right. The way I see it is, I think Nintendo feels that they want to explain everything to people that are new to Zelda, that might be scared off by the ridiculous depth of the combat and the items, I feel, I love Nintendo and I love the Zelda series, but Nintendo feels a little bit insular sometimes in that they're not aware of people playing more complex games than even the Legend of Zelda series. So they kind of hammer into your head these pretty rudimentary ideas and actions to another degree, like the tutorials and stuff. And I don't know, though, why Skyward Sword has it open up to the inventory and put something in, and then it closes the inventory. To be fair, it doesn't do it with every item. It only does it with every item once you turn off the game and turn it back on. So, which is still pretty bad. I feel like I can extend this to a lot of things. Something that bugs me in gaming is just things that are slower than they need to be. It's like, I feel like whenever you have to do something and you watch like an animation of them partying, like in Mario Party, you get a star and they spin around, they're like, woohoo! And it's like, come on. And it's like, it goes to the next guy and they roll the die, and they're moving and they're like, talk to the thwomp and the thwomp scoots around and it takes forever. And they're like, I'm playing Fortune Street and like they roll the die and the die bounces around the screen and they kind of move and they're like, and there's like a pause and then the window comes up and then there's another pause and the window goes down and it's like there's a pause in Skyward Sword and the window comes up and it adds the item to the inventory, the little it's all sparkly, and then the window goes back down and then it unpauses and Link's fighting again and then you get another item and it's like and it's like there's another thing, here's what it does, here's the window coming up, here's the sparkly, here's the window going down, back to the action. It's like, holy cow, why do we need all this window dressing?
I almost understand it from the perspective of, wanting new players to know what's going on, but I think that could be so easily accomplished by just a few brief explanations at the beginning of the game. After you've played for a few hours, you understand that you're collecting stuff, Like, so even if it's a new item, it shouldn't have this whole, hey, here's a brand new thing to collect, It's like, okay, obviously I pick it up and it floats above my head. Even if you had a little thing in the corner saying, hey, you got a blank, like, that would be sufficient,
Yeah, that's how, that's how a lot of games do it. That's how Xenoblade does it. And it doesn't pause or anything. You just can go into your inventory and then highlight the item, and it tells you what it does.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, oh, this is rare. Okay, that's neat.
Yeah, and especially in the Zelda game where you don't have 1,000 different items you can collect. It's a pretty limited number, and you have one screen that they're all there, and you can go look at it. If you're like, I just can't imagine the situation where someone gets one of these items and goes, what was that? Oh my god, what's going on?
They'd be like, I'm freaked out by this crazy feather. I don't know what this feather does. Oh, okay, it's an item I can collect. Okay, it's going in my inventory up there. Okay, I'm glad they showed me that. I feel like Nintendo, it's nice to have good presentation and all that, but there gets to be a point where all the little animations and the little sparkly things and bringing down the window, it just grates on you when you're playing like a 60-hour game.
Yeah, it completely
and I say this as someone who
pace.
loves the Zelda series, but it's a bit excessive.
Well, sure, I love most of the Zelda series, and it's really gotten to be too much in these last couple of games, and it's kind of gotten progressively more irritating. Partially because it seems like it's getting longer every time, but partially because they're not fixing it. They keep doing it.
Yeah.
And
I do feel that Skyward Sword has made things a little more streamlined in other ways. Not in that way, but I do like the running option, for instance. I like how Link's a lot more agile. Because I just like being able to go fast in games. I like being able to feel that I'm not having to wait. I don't like waiting. But, on a related note, I feel that Zelda game intros have gotten way too long, too.
Oh,
that
gosh,
includes Skyward Sword.
Wow. Yeah, it seems like in Skyward Sword and Twilight Princess and, heck, Wind Waker, too, if you want to count the first, stealth dungeon you have to go to, it's like there's these huge segments that are just tedious, filled with, characters that are... they're kind of hit and miss, honestly. Some of the characters in Skyward Sword were, likable and somewhat interesting, but I forgot pretty much all the characters in Twilight Princess that you start out with. They're not that great, honestly. It's not a compelling introduction. You compare that to Link to the Past, where, you're thrown into this situation, you're like, oh man, this is exciting, this is interesting, I want to find out what's going on, I want to go explore and learn. You don't get that in these other games because they're spoon-feeding you all this kind of bland information that doesn't enrich the world. It does not help your experience at all.
Well, I think the idea behind it is that they want to introduce you in to this world in kind of a gradual way, so that when things go wrong, you sort of have a more emotional tie to the world, which is a pretty common narrative in movies and plays and things,
yes,
especially.
That's true.
But I feel for video games, I mean, Miyamoto himself has said that the first hour or the first 30 minutes of a game is one of the most important segments because it's supposed to introduce the player to the kind of thing they're expecting in the game, which is why I like the approach that games take whenever they start off with kind of a big set piece, and then kind of slow down once you get your bearings and you sort of, then you become more accustomed to the world. I prefer that. I think the way Twilight Princess and Skyward Sword did it, and Wind Waker, to a lesser degree, is just a little bit too much, too slow,
Oh, you can go farther back than that. Even Majora's Mask. I love that game, but
Majora's
that
Mask
was not a good intro. Like, when I first got that game, I played the first 30 minutes. I just was so confused. I was like, what the heck is going on here? Oh, let me rephrase it. What the heck is going on here? It was just bewildering. And I didn't play the game for the next 2 years until you told me, oh man, this is a great game, you gotta play it. And then I'm like, all right.
This is a great game,
and then, and then obviously I love the game now, but the introduction is not good.
Majora's Mask is really off-putting at first because it's kind of cool when you're just like, okay, the Skull Kid, I'm chasing the Skull Kid. Then you kind of turn into this Deku scrub, and you're like, well, I guess I can go with this, whatever. Then you gotta shoot down Tingle with a snot bubble, and like get a map, and go get a fairy, and then meet another great fairy, which is, side note, I do not like the design of the great fairies in Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. What in the world? Also, and then beyond that, you're like, you find the bombers, you're going on like this trip to hunt for the bombers, and you haven't been able to fight anything the whole time, you're just like this Deku scrub and you can't really do much. And if you mess up, then you got to do the entire opening sequence again. So, yeah. Well, Chris, I have to agree with you about that sort of element in general, because my favorite Zelda game is actually The Legend of Zelda on the NES. Mm-hmm. And this is the game with the least amount of dialogue in any Zelda, and absolutely the least amount of hand-holding.
Yeah.
I mean, you get an item and it goes doo-doo-doo-doo, and then it's like, well, what do I do with that thing? What do I do with this book?
That game doesn't even start you with a sword. I mean, it's in the cave right there, but you can start that game and not get the sword, and you can just wander around what's going on? Here is Zelda 1 with modern Zelda philosophy. You would show up, right, and then it would say, go north to get the sword. And if you try to leave the screen, it would say, go north to get the sword. So you have to go in the little cave, and the old man there would say, long ago there's been a prophecy of a hero coming this way, and he'll go on this long spiel about the backstory, and then he'll give you the sword, right? But then you can't leave, you see. Then he'll say, all right, let's train with the sword. And he'll bring out a rock or an enemy or something, and it'll be like, press B to swing your sword forward. And you do that, and they'll say, press B to swing your sword forward when your life is full, and you'll shoot a sword. Right? And then he'll continue on in that way for a little bit longer, maybe 10, 15 minutes. Then finally you can leave, but you can't really explore. You're only on a set path to level 1. If you try to leave any of the screens that you wouldn't be able to normally leave, like, I don't know, your fairy partner would say, hey, you can't go that way. So that's Zelda 1 and the modern Zelda mentality. I love Zelda 1 because I can turn on the game, I can skip the sword, and I can beat the game without the sword. And that is like exploration and experimentation in its purest form in a game. I think that's kind of I hesitate to say relic, but that is a facet of older games that we don't see a lot in modern games. Part of the reason for that is that, I'd say a lot of modern games have tended towards being more cinematic. You see that in Zelda too, all these cutscenes with more articulated dialogue, even though they're not speaking, but
right.
Their mouths move and they move around like actors on a screen, and you sit there and watch. It's even worse in other games like Gears of War or games where you're running down a path shooting stuff and you have to watch stuff blow up. it's like you're on a roller coaster ride. There's no real experimentation or creativity or exploration. It's just, okay, go to the next place that the game expects you to go, and then the game shows you something or tells you something, and then you move on to the next one and fight the thing that the game wants you to fight. And it's missing a really core element of what I think makes games interesting, which is
exploration.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, having to think and learn and, I don't know, do something that the game isn't explicitly telling you what to do.
Yeah, no, I hear you. This is definitely an element of gaming that I miss. And some of my favorite games of all time are the kind that let you play your own way. So, but I really want Nintendo to kind of go back to those roots, because if any series should be doing that, it's Zelda. So I'd really like them to realize that.
Yeah.
All right, so the Zelda series is it is fun.
It was fun.
No, don't say that. You're breaking my heart. All right, let's move on to a new segment called Reader Comments. We got Mad Machine from our forums, and he says about the last podcast and our specifically our discussion on Phantoon and the Shirime, the thing with the eyeball in his behind. He says, you know what they say, hindsight is 20/20. Yeah, that was a pretty good gag. I kind of wish I had thought of that. All right, so next we have Dorko4U from the forum says, that may have been the goofiest podcast I've ever listened to just because of the musical introductions. I think it was the one for Why Did They Do That? That put a smile on my face. This podcast was a nice thing to listen to, or it was enjoyable. But having to decide between a podcast and more comics, that's a toughie. I wouldn't mind seeing a few more podcasts at least. Right now what we're doing is... Oh, sorry, this is me talking. That's in quote, I guess I should say. Right now what we're doing is we're putting out another podcast with the comic since we had a variety of responses, but a lot of people don't necessarily want to commit just yet to losing one comic for the podcast. So we're not quite sure yet how we'll handle this, but for now, here is a free podcast with the comic. And finally, we have Sonic Oreos who says, I love the podcast. My only suggestion would be to shorten up the main segment a little. It was pretty long, end quote. And that's something that we're going to probably get better at doing that as we go along. I'm still not quite sure what the ideal amount of time for a podcast is, but that's one of the reasons we wanted to focus on Link to the Past this time around, because more people have played it, and it'd be less about me kind of describing the game and more about people, being able to apply their own thoughts to the game while they listen. I mean, we're aware of pacing and everything, so it's just something that we are working on. Finally, it's time to wrap things up with a little section called Music Break. Okay, so since we've discussed Link to the Past today, I decided to make the music break relevant to that game, so I hope you enjoy. guess that wraps it up for another Brawl in the Family podcast.
Oh, that was a pretty good one.
Yeah, I think so. I made more mistakes than I planned to. Well, I guess that's goes without saying.
That's what editing is for.
Yes, that's what editing is for. I'm going to go back and...
cut out some of those gaps and things, so I sound a lot more articulate than I actually is.
I don't know. I don't think we talked enough about Zelda today.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I mean, I could talk about Zelda all day. Like, we could have like a special 12-hour podcast where I just discuss every game in the series and what it brought to the table. But I don't think anyone needs to be subjected to that.
Maybe not today anyway.
Yeah.
We didn't touch on everything, though.
Oh, that's true. Well, I mean, there will probably be future Zelda-centric podcasts. So we'll definitely have opportunities to discuss that in the future as well.
I wonder what Ganon's up to.
Oh, boy! Is it time to discuss the CDI Zeldas?
Yep.
How about a kiss for luck, my boy? Huh! Your Majesty, Ganon and his minions have seized the island of Korodai.
How can we help?
Sorry, I stepped on your line. It is written, only Link can defeat Ganon. Great! I'll grab my stuff! Man, but once I get started, I just can't stop.
It's such a quotable series.
Every line is quotable for that game. That's awesome.
It burns! Not the book!
And they're all cuddling on the carpet at the end because they can't quite fit everyone. Like it's Link and that's Twisty. He's like, "You, Link, are the hero of Korodai. Surely that's where the kiss." Yeah, they're all like snuggled together. He's all getting all cozy. The birds are singing. Isn't it beautiful? Golly.
I
want bling bling. Classic. I played the first one. It was
Yeah, they had it at one of those cons we went to, didn't they?
Yeah, they had it at no, I think it was No Brand Con. It was funny. They have a tutorial in that game. Maybe it was you know what? I just realized CDI Zelda, what is it? Faces of Evil was the first Zelda to introduce a tutorial to the series. That it's always CDI Zelda's fault. He's like, "If you crouch, I can do the duck walk."
So one day, they tell Aonuma, "Hey, buddy, you're going to direct the next Legend of Zelda game. Better be good." First, a lot of responsibility on his shoulders. He's all nervous. He's like, "Oh, I got to play these old games, and I got to know what's going on here before I direct a game." So he's playing all the old Zelda games, and he's like, This first Zelda game is so hard. It's just all this exploration, and it doesn't tell him where to go. This is dumb. He never beat that one. So then he's playing through the other ones, and he finds this Faces of Evil. What is this? And he pops it in, and he's just playing the beginning of the game, and he's so excited. It's so many good ideas that have not been shown in these other Zelda games.
This is yeah,
it's brilliant.
Oh, wait. So it introduces all these characters at the beginning, and then it has this tutorial right after that. We need to do that. He suddenly got possessed by the spirit of CDI Link. So he said, "Miyamoto, Koji Kondo, we're going to make a great game. Now how about a kiss?"
Miyamoto's like, "Ha!"
Yeah, that's how it happened. And that's the origin of the constant tutorials in Zelda. All CDI Zelda's fault. Well, all right. I guess that wraps it up. So, time to say bye-bye, Chris.
Bye-bye, Chris. And thanks for listening, everybody.
All right. Nice farewell. Okay, so long, everyone, and happy gaming. Hey, I'm glad
You're amazing at that. You could have a symphony orchestra just composed of your hand farts.
I'm glad I cut that on the recording, because that was surprisingly in tune.
Editing is a pretty powerful tool. Like, I can make people say things that they've never said before. I like to kiss a picture of Bob Saget every night.
Doesn't Brawl in the Family ignore that Mario 2 is in Mario's dream?
Yeah, for the most part. I think it has, from the Mario 2 comics I've done, I mean, Wario, Wart still exists, and stuff has happened in that, so. Also, I mean, what does Mario dream about Shy Guys, and then later Shy Guys actually exist? Or Birdo, Like, suddenly Birdo is manifested in the real world? Or did Mario just meet Birdo once and then have a dream about her? about her spitting
Oh,
eggs
man.
and guarding these eagle faces.
That'd be quite a trip.